covering all 4 major sports in the District of Champions. It's the DC Crossover Podcast with your hosts, Mike Cerrone and Ben Simpson.
Hello and welcome back to the DC Crossover. A little special interview here as we are talking Commanders on this segment. And let's bring in Michael Phillips from Richmond Times-Dispatch. You can follow Michael on Twitter at MichaelPRTD. We are breaking things down of this most recent draft here for the Commanders. A lot to talk about here. But Michael, let's start before we dive into the individual picks. We want to get some thoughts on that. Going into the draft, what were your positions that you kind of figured this is where this team really needs to concentrate in finding talent or building out these types of positions? What were some of the ones at the top of your list?
Yeah, I think the two we had circled were defensive back and wide receiver coming in, and so certainly hard to fault that you leave with, a viable option at both positions. I had thought if they turned in the card at 11, it was going to be for a cornerback or a safety, and then at about pick 5, I realized that is not what was going to happen. Kyle Hamilton slid, but the rest of them didn't. But that said, I really like the outcome of trading down, getting more picks. I know they didn't get that superstar talent that's up there at the very top of the board, but I don't think they gave up a lot. And I think the net was they got a lot. So I think the trade down is probably, as close to a universal consensus as you can get.
The funny thing, Michael, that I've been hearing over the last couple of days is that, they didn't get enough. They didn't get is anyone ever happy when you trade back? Now, you look at the Patriots, and I've been thinking about this for the last week or so, and I don't understand when people don't trade back enough, because the Patriots, even though this year is an exception because they apparently didn't have the best draft according to a lot of people. But when you're looking at the Patriots, they get so many picks. And if you think about it, the more you roll the dice on people, the more percentage you're going to have to hit on somebody. So I just don't understand that people are never going to be happy. Were you happy that they actually traded back and they actually got some more capital, and hey, we only traded back 5 spots. We still got a guy that's going to start on the football team. So what do you think about how much they got back in the sense?
Yeah, I think it was more about what happened between 11 and 16. I got the sense, so at 8, right, Drake London goes off the board. That's the guy, that would have been the guy. But that kind of resets everything there. So Drake's gone, and then, it's 11, you trade back. And I got the sense that everybody's like, yeah, let's trade back. That's good. But then Olave goes, Kyle Hamilton goes, no, those were all the guys we wanted. How did you trade back? Now we don't get the guy we wanted. Yeah. But look, if they turned in the card at 11, half the people would have been mad anyway, because they were either going to go Hamilton or receiver, and that was a 50-50 split anyway. I'm with you. Look, this was, even in it, not even just talking about the first pick, but in its totality, this was a high floor, low ceiling draft.
Right.
And that is not exciting. So we can just set that aside right now. People do not get excited by that, but it is how you build functional football teams that win games. They didn't shoot for the Super Bowl. They shot for a playoff appearance, and I think that's what they want to be this year.
Right. I mean, it's just fascinating when you see someone to go out there and just say because I had someone say to me today that's a Giants fan, I don't think you got enough back. I'm like, dude, just enjoy your top, 7 picks and just get out of my face. Yeah. But looking at our first round pick in Datsun, now, for some reason, I think that he had a lot of great stats, a lot of great highlights. I think the best stat is the drop catching. He barely didn't drop any footballs at all last season. And I think that a lot of people are just kind of, I don't know if they're ragging on the Commanders just because it's the Commanders and the dysfunction sometimes that you hear all the time. I think that some people just are kind of overlooking Datsun and how well he played last year in his career in general. I've heard recently Trace McSorley said, a ton of great things at Penn State when he was a senior at Penn State, and that we have this guy that's going to be a great player and stuff like that. And he was talking about Datsun. That was years ago. So What are your thoughts on Datsun? Because yes, he wasn't like, Garrett Wilson type and all that kind of stuff where everyone was like, that guy's going to go one of the top 2 wide receivers taken. What are your thoughts on him? Because obviously we've been talking about getting a complementary wide receiver to Terry McLaurin. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, look, they're paying for the past year because last year they take Jamin Davis, and I'm doing the rounds after because what did you think of the Jamin Davis pick? I said, look, I don't know. People say it's a reach, but if there's anybody in the world I trust to scout a linebacker, it's the guy who won a Super Bowl as a linebacker, coached linebackers, coached Luke Kuechly, coached Thomas Davis. That is the guy I trust to evaluate linebackers. And so now I sit here 12 months later, a humbled man, because it turns out Ron was not the right person to evaluate linebackers. And now it didn't work. It was a miss. And so, it's hard to write, now you say like, oh, who's Ron to reach and go against the consensus? I mean, look, we don't know how this is going to go, but I do think he got exactly what he was looking for. I think he was looking for a guy who can line up opposite Terry, take some focus off the defense. This kid runs really good routes. I mean, that's the thing that just jumps out to you when you're watching the tape. Chris Bratz has a great sense of separation, getting it. And he makes those contested catches. He's going to make everybody else better. If you can get him, McLaurin, Samuel, Logan Thomas, Antonio Gibson out on the field all at once, you got 5 guys who can do something with the football in space. That's going to be, that's Big 12 style, man. Spread out the field. You got 5 guys that can do whatever you want. That's impressive. Now, you still got to protect the quarterback. That's where the O-line comes in. But if you can get that many playmakers on the field at once, on paper, I think that's really good.
Is the main knock against Datsun just the size issue as far as 5'11", and was he 178 or something like that? Is that what you're kind of seeing as well as like the one negative or drawback, as you see some pretty bigger receivers taken in this draft, and then you got Datsun who's on the smaller end. He's about as tall as Mike and I.
Yeah, Ron didn't do himself any favors in the post-draft press conference. He said he's like a Deshaun Jackson type. And what he meant was he's a guy who can get downfield, catch a long pass. Yeah. But what we all heard was that dude gets hurt a lot. We got a history there. We remember that. That is definitely going to be. And then look, he wasn't one of the big 4 coming into the draft that everybody's hyping up. I could be wrong, because I would have said this about McLaurin a few years ago. I don't see any way he becomes a number 1 in the NFL. To me, he's going to hit his ceiling here this year, which is really good number 2. So I don't know that's the world's best value proposition, but I think it's exactly what you need at this point in time, because goodness, we are all so tired of Terry being underutilized because there's just nothing else out there. And, if nothing else, this is a huge solid to Terry, because, man, we need to see that kid just explode one season and show everybody what he's got, and he hasn't been able to do it so far.
Right. Moving on to the Mathis pick. So this is one that, it seems to be causing some conversation, to say the least, on Twitter. And a lot of the conversation seems to be around, was this kind of a scared pick because what you're seeing with Daron Payne entering the final year of his deal, and obviously losing Ioannidis and Settle, and just another Alabama DT that we just keep they're just funneling into this program, it seems like. I guess one of the thoughts that people have been having is, if you had just been able to keep, Settle or Ioannidis or one of those, then maybe you could have used this pick on a different position. Instead, you got to try to fill that gap. This seems like a team captain guy, good chemistry guy. There's a lot to like, I feel like, when it comes to Mathis. But what are your thoughts on the pick as a whole? Do you kind of see both sides of it, or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'd agree with that assessment. I mean, Ron put out the fire, but I think he started it too. So, you only get partial credit for that. Knowing how this was all going to go down, I'd sure rather have Tim Settle, honestly, than this whole thing. And that's to take nothing away from Federian. He's obviously a beast and is going to be very good. And the track record of these Alabama kids speaks for itself. But just felt like they created a problem, then solved the problem, and now are patting themselves on the back, for solving the problem. Well, hang on a second. You created the problem too. You only get partial credit. For what it is, it's a fine pick. I look at this defensive line, which is now 4 first-round picks, Federian Mathis, a second-round pick. And then I look at the secondary where I think you're really just fingers crossed at this point that St. Jude is going to come through in year 2. And I just thought, man, what a big discrepancy. And, then this is just the facts of what it is. I mean, it's going to be fun to watch those guys up front work. And also, if anything goes wrong on the back end, it's going to be brutal to watch. It feels a little imbalanced, if nothing else.
I honestly was very confused because I was in Pittsburgh this past weekend and, they were all, pumped up about Kenny Pickett and everything like that. So I saw their excitement. And then all of a sudden the second round of the draft came and I was like, man, I'm really pumped to see what guy in the secondary they're going to get. And all of a sudden they're like, all right, Alabama, choo choo down the tracks. Here we go. I'm like, what are we doing here? Like, I mean, it's like, do you know that we need some second? So, I mean, I'm not going to, decide for them and say like, you guys are completely wrong and this and that. But I just think that when you're looking at even the Brian Robinson pick, I'm a little confused because yes, he's a totally different back than Antonio Gibson. He's more of a bruiser in between the tackles, different things like that. But again, there were other guys that are on the board that could easily help this secondary. And, it's not like every day you're going to come across a Cam Curl that's going to be picked in the 100th round, it feels like, and all of a sudden go out there and be a great starter. So I'm just confused on the pick and also the later picks, like I said, with Brian Robinson and so on and so forth, where they didn't really address the secondary until way too late. And I think that like the train left the tracks at that point where now you're just getting guys that are probably going to be more so special teamers, if not, might not even make the team at some point in the future. So what are your kind of thoughts on the remaining picks after the Mathis pick? Because some of them had some question marks behind them.
Yeah, you mentioned Percy Butler, who, what was the first thing everybody said about, that kid's a beast on special teams? Like, that's not exactly what you really love to hear. Like, that is great, and special teams are important. But I think we all see this the same way. So, coming out of the draft, I have no urgent concerns about any position except the secondary. So, you look at it, they're good at receiver. They're good on the offensive line, I think. Look, you lost Sheriff. It's not great, but I think they're good on the offensive line.
Right.
You got your guy at quarterback. That's fine. Running back, Robbins is gonna do well. I actually like the Robinson pick. I think there's good value there. And I think having a guy who's not going to fumble is really big, especially some of those Antonio Gibson fumble. I love Antonio Gibson. Some of those fumbles, though, were deep in their own territory. Hey, let's gain 4 yards, get Tressway some room, flip the field, and then he fumbles it all of a sudden. It's just the other way for 7. Brian Robinson will immediately pay dividends in that situation. If he saves you 7, I don't know. I like the pick. I think it was worth it. You look at the defense, obviously the line's great. I think they're just de-emphasizing the linebacker position entirely. You look at what they did late last year, 5 on the line a lot of times, and certainly, by taking Mathis, they're tipping their hand that they're probably going to keep doing that at some point. You got 5 in the secondary a lot of the time with that Buffalo nickel position that everybody loves to talk about. So that's 10. So you're going to have 2 linebackers on the field most plays, 1 linebacker on the field potentially someplace. That's your answer to not having a great linebacker. You got, if Jamin comes along a little better, and you got Cole Holcomb, and that's your linebacking core. But that all counts on having a strong secondary. And look, I know you can't draft every position every time. That's that's part of the fun of the draft is you have to prioritize. But I join you in that concern that this secondary, as constructed right now, does not appear to be good enough to hang with the rest of the unit.
Yeah, I was a little shaken up that day, to say the least. I'm not going to lie, because I was just so pumped up to see, some analysis on a corner or whatever it may be. Yeah. But it didn't fall our way. But overall, it's not a terrible draft. And I mean, like you said, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think Mathis is the pick you circle to say that was the spot to do it in, because I do like the Robinson pick and the value. I think Percy Butler, he is in the secondary, but it's round 4. You're going to get what you get. Nobody's arguing with Sam Howell, the value there. Then you run down the board, like you're throwing darts in the 7th round. Those guys seem like they'll be fine. We'll see what they turn into. So I think it's the number 2 that you really circle.
So Sam Howell, you mentioned him real quick. I'm surprised, honestly, that he fell that far down. I mean, this year was not the quarterback year. Let's be honest here. I mean, next year is going to be loaded with some quarterbacks and stuff like that. But I'm just looking at the Sam Howell pick, and The funny thing was, I actually called it because a buddy of mine was like sitting there saying, "Man, who do you think the Commanders are going to take in the 5th round?" First of all, I was like, "Well, who cares?" But then at the same time, I was like, "Don't be surprised. Sam Howell might be the pick," and he actually got picked, and I was surprised by that. But looking at it, obviously we have Carson, who's going to be the starter this year. That's a given, and they also have that out for next year. But looking at Sam Howell, in your opinion, now I'm not trying to put you on the spot here, but in your opinion, do you think if he progresses somehow a ton this year, do you think that he could possibly slide into that role if Carson does not perform that well and we kind of get out of that contract?
I think that's the fun of the pick. The fun of the pick is you get a no-risk opportunity to explore that because, look, what have we learned from drafting quarterbacks? Many of them are busts. That is the way it works. But if this is a bust, you lost nothing. Like we're talking about, think about Dwayne, Robert. I mean, those guys, when you miss on that, it sets the franchise back. When Robert injured himself the second time and it was clear he wasn't coming back to form, you lost 3 first-round picks, which you count on to be decade-long starters. You lost 30 years of production. Dwayne, when you lose Dwayne, that was a first-round pick that could have been, a very impactful player on the field. So when you miss on those first rounders, there's so much pressure behind it. If they miss on a 5th round pick, whatever. If Cole Turner doesn't pan out, nobody's going to be filleting Ron. How dare you take Cole Turner there? Same with Sam Howell. I think that's the fun of the pick is it's a low risk way to get the kid in the building, kick the tires on him for a year. I think I'll sidetrack us into Carson because I think what's fascinating is I think he'll be evaluated on things other than record at the end of the year, because I think this is a team that, look, they won 7 with Taylor Heineke and a month of COVID on the roster, and they have an easier schedule this year. I think you start from the assumption they're going to 9, and I think playoffs is certainly within reach, just on easier schedule, not getting having the whole team get COVID and upgrade at quarterback because Wentz is of course better than Heineke. So they could make the playoffs and you could still see enough from Howell and not enough from Carson to pull the trigger. And that would set the world on fire. But I honestly think, that's where we're coming in here and starting this from is no risk obligation on Howell, and we'll see what happens with Carson.
Hey, I think De'Ami Brown is actually pretty happy too because he's like, man, maybe I can get off the milk carton and actually show something.
Yeah. No, now
I'm waiting for Cam Sims to jump off that milk carton too.
Yeah,
for 4 years.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. We're here with Michael Phillips, Richmond Times-Dispatch. Again, you can follow him on Twitter at Michael P. RTD. Before we wrap up here, got 2 final questions for you. One is more important than the other, but first up, I would like to know. The big thing with drafts, of course, is the grade. What's the grade? What's the grade? What's the grade? And I am curious what your grade that you would give the Commanders draft year. And I'm seeing a lot of positivity out there, which is great when it comes to the Commanders, because obviously we've seen the various iterations of this team. There never seems to be positivity going towards this team. But from the national media, I see a lot of B pluses, A minus, A's, things like that. So I want to know your grade, and then I also want to know. The less important question is your draft night snack of choice. This is a food-based show. We do a lot of food talk on it. And I would love to know, especially for those that first night and then probably the second day drafting as well, what your go-to is where you've got the TV up. I'm sure you're shooting out tweets and writing articles and things like that, but you got to have a go-to snack for draft night. So grade and snack.
All right, I'm going to jump into that in a second because we're going to have to go deep there, obviously.
Sure. Okay, good.
I'm going to give them I think it's a solid B because I think they were shooting for a solid B. The A teams are the teams that take the razzle dazzle guys, who could be superstars. They weren't gunning for that. They were gunning for a B. They were gunning for solid role players who are going to jump right in and play. To me, the trade back was an A. That was a big win. I ding them for the second round pick of Mathis. As we mentioned, I think that was an opportunity to address some more pressing needs at the time. And then you get value out of Sam Howell. To me, it's a solid B. I think you leave it feeling good while acknowledging you didn't make the headlines. Nobody nationally is gonna be like Washington, man. Boy, they crushed it. You did well. You did well. So I was up in Ashburn, with the other beat writers, and on Thursday night we had Paisano's Pizza,
Okay.
And on Friday night, we got Chick-fil-A, the big tray of nuggets and some sandwiches and wraps and stuff.
Solid.
And we had just a knockdown argument about which was the better play. Because I think, look, we all agree Chick-fil-A, crazy high ceiling. I mean, like, look, they do one thing, they do it very well. That's a great play. Paisanos, you got the pizza, the wings, the salad. I mean, certainly a lot across the board. My thought is, I'm there for 7 hours, and Friday we're there for like 10 hours. I want something that's going to hold up late in the day. And that's not nuggets. Like the nuggets, man, everybody's like, oh, nuggets, it's great. Like at 6 o'clock, at 11 o'clock, like that's a gross plate of nuggets. Pizza, man, pizza hang out all weekend. Pizza will be there for you when you need it. So
100%.
The pizza was there for me when I needed it. And I appreciate that. We went with like a sandwich spread. I want to say it was Jersey Mike's maybe on the third day. Just some deli sandwiches. Again, long day.
No expense spared there at Jersey Mike's. It's like the cheapest sandwich out there. But okay.
It's that's a 5th round pick for you. Like there's no that ain't making the Pro Bowl. But hey, sometimes you just need a ham sandwich to keep making it through the day. So
it's solid.
That's where you're at. So it's a win. I am a Mountain Dew drinker. I don't drink coffee. I drink Mountain Dew. So I'm kind of
nice.
Weirdo to begin with. But now I pounded a few of those, especially Friday night.
Yeah, we did during COVID. We did a chicken sandwich tournament. Of course, trying all the different chicken sandwiches, and I believe it came down to Chick-fil-A and Popeyes, right, Mike? And I think Popeyes ended up taking it, but Chick-fil-A is always going to be in the mix because they're just consistently some of the best in the game, for sure.
You know what you're getting there for. I invite you all to come to Richmond. Lily Pearl is the restaurant here downtown, a couple of blocks from RTD World headquarters. They actually make the best chicken sandwich in the world. It's just a one-off though. It's just a restaurant. So
right.
You can do that better than a chain. But boy,
sure. You got to come to Herndon and get Woo Boy. Woo Boy hot chicken in Herndon. Yeah, Woo Boy in Herndon. Right. It's been around for about 4 years now. It's made a bunch of lists, Washington Post lists and things like that. It's their Nashville hot chicken sandwich. So you got the coleslaw, you got the pickles and all that stuff. It's solid.
I'm on it. I'll give you one more story before we bounce because we were in Nashville. We went to Hattie B's, which has the
I know Hattie B's,
hot chicken places. And we're there with David Aldridge, who writes for the Athletic for the team. And the waiter comes around. He goes, "Oh, I know you, NBA on TNT. Man, what are you doing here? You should be down in Memphis. That's where the team is." And then David Aldridge is like, "No, I cover, the Redskins now. I'm here for the football game." I go, "No, you're NBA on TNT. I know who you are."
Now, when I was in Nashville, I went to Big Shakes. That's what it was called. And it had I think they're really good friends. Like the owner's really good friends with Damon from Shark Tank. So he was like plastered all over the walls. I was like, man, you're sticking to that one guy,
It's all about the hot chicken challenge, man. We Woo Boy's got one of the hottest chicken sandwiches I've ever had, but it's darn good, that's for sure. So you come up here, try that. We'll go down to Richmond and try that place for sure.
Game on.
Well, Michael, we appreciate you joining us this evening. Again, you can follow him on Twitter at Michael PRTD. Any articles people should be looking out for? Anything in the works that you're working on right now for Richmond Times-Dispatch?
Nah, we'll wrap up the draft. Friday is the rookie practice, the rookie mini camp. And the undrafted guys come through, so it's always fun to see who they bring in. So I would imagine that'll be a fun day out at the park.
All righty. Well, perfect. Thanks for hopping on with us. And again,
thanks, Michael.
You can read him at the Richmond Times-Dispatch. Thanks, Michael.
Take care, guys.